Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Turbo Discovery Challenge. With today's episode, we are going to be worrying about our lap times. I've already spent hours trying to get the best lap times that I could with each car, so I already have the winners listed, but we are going to do some recordings and get some driving video of each and every car in the competition, because it seemed like some of you guys were looking forward to seeing your cars get driven. So, starting off, we have the Melvin Lone Star Turbo Rocket. As you could already tell just by looking at it, it drives a bit like a boat. Overall, not too bad though. Pretty easy to handle. For most of the cars, I tried doing pretty good at just drifting around corners, because I felt like that was the quickest way to get through the course. I know that oftentimes it's not the quickest way around a track, but it seemed to work the best for me, especially with a lot of the cars having a ton of wheel spin. The best way to try to make that wheel spin work for me was to just drift the corners a bit. And then right here we have basically the one straightaway where I was actually able to get most cars up to around somewhere between 60 to 80 miles per hour. Of course, normally I don't hit curbs much, but since I'm just giving a little bit of a demonstration, I'm not trying too hard. Next we have the Jupiter Turbo, which has a bit of a slow start. I think this was one of those cars where I basically never took it out of first gear the entire time. Except for maybe on the straightaway. Yeah, I pretty much already had to be braking by the time I got to second gear. Next is the VAC Bullet, which if you've been watching these episodes, you know that it is also another first gear lover. Definitely no time for me to take this car out of first gear on this track. On the bright side though, it is nice to drive a car that doesn't get crazy wheel spin every time you turn a corner. I feel like it was kind of interesting because obviously you are going to get wheel spin in some of these high power cars when you're limited to sports compound, I think it was. But at the same time, perhaps maybe some of you guys should have gave the cars a little less power. Next is the Raptor GT6. Finally a car that actually gets pretty good takeoff. Next we have the Butler & Jones Rumbler. FYI guys, I'm not like the best critic ever, so I'm just trying to be honest about how I felt driving these cars, and if I kind of diss your car, I'm kind of sorry, but I'm just trying to be honest about it, because I feel like that's the best way to go about it. Oh, don't want to hit the mailboxes. I'm also, of course, not the best driver ever, so... But what's funny, though, is that doing this championship and trying to get all these laps, I feel like I've improved a lot, despite, you know, driving through walls there. Before this, I was definitely crap at drifting anything rear-wheel drive, but now I feel like I'm actually pretty good at it. Next is the Sunshine GTI. Another bit of a wheel spin monster. Just keeps spinning in second gear. I also learned a good bit of throttle control, I suppose, while doing this. Because there was definitely a lot of cars that you could not floor at all, or you were just going to spin forever. This car would be one of those. It also makes it very difficult because it's hard to tell when you're actually at the top of a gear rather than just spinning your tires, but you still have about 10 or so miles per hour to go before you reach red line. Next up is the Empire Club Sport concept. This car actually stood out to me the first time that I drove it because it was a bit stiffer than most of the other cars I had driven at the time. It was also rather quick, and it likes to spin the tires sometimes, aka a lot. I also noticed while doing these time trials that some cars could handle going over the sidewalks and get a decent little shortcut, I suppose, but some like this, you would just kill the car if you tried to go over the sidewalk. Next is the Commack XTR. Another bit of a slow starter, but eventually it gets up there. I also want to mention basically my way of doing this testing. So, of course, I was playing with some super hype music to give me the motivation to get my best times. And then I also, by default, I would give 2 good tries for every car. But pretty much if I felt like I could have gotten a better time, or like I messed up somewhere, then I would give it another go. So some cars I ended up with many tries, some not so much because I felt like I did it pretty good right off the bat. But no matter what, each car got at least 2 tries. And usually before that I got a lap to try to get a hang of the car, see how it drove. And now we have the Panamericana 547 SR. As soon as I started driving this one before, I'm just going to restart that. As soon as I started driving this one originally, it immediately struck me as having a more interesting, unique driving experience. Because it's really big, like the Melvin Lone Star is, but it's a lot easier to handle when you aren't spinning out. But yeah, I quite enjoy it. And overall, it's a very interesting car in general. I mean, it's a It's a big old car when it's a rear engine with a Boxer 6. It actually handles and drifts pretty good. I imagine that that engine weight on the back is helping it out. Overall, I'm definitely a pretty big fan of driving it. Next is the Fierro 3.0 Turbo. Overall, pretty nice, pretty tame driving experience. Has just the right amount of wheel spin to. I was gonna say not spin out, but I suck. But you get my point. If you're not distracted doing commentary, it has just the right amount of wheel spin to not spin out. Ironically. The crashing idol is back with the Baronet Royale. And I stalled it. Also, another thing to mention is that I felt like drifting was one of the best ways to take these corners, because most of the cars, the steering angle is just, you know, kind of crap, honestly. Of course, it's kind of hard to control that in automation, but a lot of the cars you turn and they just do not go where you want them to go. But drifting helps with that a lot. You get way more turning out of drifting, of course. Just like that. In that. See guys, I told you I've gotten good at drifting from this stuff. Just some cars are easier than others, of course. Next is the Eagle Banded Turbo RX. Now, I know that this isn't meant to be any sort of a drifting competition, but if it was, I'm pretty sure that this car would be the winner. Crap. Because out of all the cars, this car just seems to really want to drift all of the corners. First gear gets you going, and then usually in second gear, you can still drift just about every corner by giving it a little bit of gas. Man, this car is just, it's so loose. It just wants to have the rear end fly out. And then of course I'm also trying to work with that, but then sometimes I go too far with it. Next is the Goblin 875. Man, I'm just awful at drifting when I'm talking to you guys, huh? Overall, I was a pretty good fan of how this car drove. It was nice and quick without having a ton of wheel spin. Man, I just hate myself. I did it again. Next is the S20 R200 Turbo. Oops. Still caught it. Oh, I should not have gone over that sidewalk. Yeah, overall pretty good driving experience. As you guys can see, I haven't spun out, so obviously this thing's pretty tame. Which, of course, isn't always a bad thing when you're trying to take it around a little track. Next we have the P103. Ah yes, I love spinning out in this video. Again, I felt this was one of the cars that could put down a pretty good amount of power, but without spinning out like crazy. Trust me, listen to my words, not the footage you're seeing, because I just suck while I'm giving commentary. See that? That was a good drift, despite hitting the curb. Next is the TS180. A very peppy car indeed. Look at that, a good drift. I love every time I pull that off in one of these clips now. I guess it kind of goes without saying that as we get closer to my quickest lap times, the cars are quicker while also being more controllable. A lot of the earlier cars were also quick, but they just couldn't put the power down very well. And then I think somewhere around here is where the cars started to be able to do that a lot better. Next is the Altair Ti5. I think this was one of the first cars that I drove where it didn't get a whole ton of wheel spin. Like, you can actually floor it in first gear and it won't just spin tires all day. But at the same time, it actually still gets a good amount of power. But then, of course, if you do want to get the wheels to spin, just a little bit of clutch and e-brake work and you'll get it. And then you'll spin out because you're not good. But yeah, overall a nice driving experience. I promise. Next is the Ghost XR8 TT. Ah yes, I love hitting walls. So again, similarly to the last car, I did enjoy how you can get a good amount of power out of this car without getting a ton of wheel spin. I also felt like this car was nicely planted to the ground. Next is the 944 Turbo S. It's our crazy car that enjoys overheating. Despite overheating though, I was able to get a pretty good time with it. I just tried to not give it too much gas. which of course that's good for the coolant, and then also just because it's a wheel spin machine. Next we have the Turbo Sport Monza. Come on. This was another one of the cars that surprised me when I drove it. I had started off testing with lowest acceleration to highest acceleration during my testing, and so this car was a little on the low end. It only scored an 8 in acceleration, but despite that, it's still it's actually quite fast around this tiny track, and the handling is nice too. Next is the Piranha 75 TB. Let's just go for a better start there. One where I'm actually revving it. There we go, it's a bit better. This is another car that has a quite the first gear. Definitely not as crazy as some of the others, but I think this one goes up to around 60 or 70 miles per hour. And yet it still has enough power to give you some nice wheel spin. Next is my own Venom Twinno CS. I should know the name of my own car, shouldn't I? Oh well. This is one of only 2 cars, I believe, that are 4x4. And I think the 4x4 actually gives a pretty good advantage, despite the fact that it can't turn very well. This thing is definitely not at all good at drifting, and it sucks at turning. But despite that, the 4x4 works really well with, of course, getting you good acceleration by giving power to all 4 wheels. And then by doing that, you're also avoiding wheel spin issues. So yeah, honestly not that fun to drive with the crappy turning, but it's quick. Next is the classic GT. Well, despite spinning out, I was just about to say this is another car that actually doesn't have a lot of wheel spin issues. See, when you're a crappy driver like me, you love when cars don't have wheel spin, because then you can floor it without having to worry about like feathering the throttle to not ruin your times by spinning your tires the entire time. Or spinning out. Yet I still managed to do it. Next we have the M.G. Type 4 Turbo. The car that once again surprised me because it's not a manual like every other car. Of course, having an automatic in this time trial is actually sort of nice because you don't have to worry about shifting and you can pretty much just floor it the whole time. I keep trying to clutch it, I shouldn't be. Also, I wanted to mention, I'm sorry if you guys are getting tired of hearing me complain about my driving, but I really wish I could show you guys some really good clips of my best times with these cars and some of the best that I did with them, but Sadly, halfway through testing, I realized that my recording was picking up all the music I was playing. And normally, of course, I wouldn't care, but YouTube would care, so it was either not use those clips or mute them and have no engine noise. And I don't know about you guys, but I hate seeing cars driven with no engine noise, so... As you guys can see, this car handles pretty well. Did I even mention what car this was? Man, I'm goofy. Alright guys, this is the Baytos V8. Forgot to mention that. It drives pretty swell. It's very quick, but also keeps distraction pretty well. Next up is the SXS Tarshish. And I broke the wheel. Overall, I'd say this one's pretty quick. Definitely gets some good wheel spin. Also doesn't like turning very well. But if you can get the wheel spin to work with you, you can fix that. Like that. See, look how good I am. Look how good this car is. Oh yeah. There's nothing more satisfying in this game for me than pulling off a really good drift. Because it's so much harder than in other, arcade racers that pretty much just give you the drift. In this game, you really gotta do it right. And I broke the wheel, and I hit the thing. Well, you guys get the idea. Nice car. Next is Goblin's GTO. Which, as you guys could probably guess, I was a bit scared of trying to get a good time out of, like, 700 horsepower. But, of course, with it being all the way up here, I did manage to tame this thing well enough to do it. Overall, the suspension is pretty stiff. And, of course, this thing loves spinning its tires. Oh, damn. This thing's smoking. What'd I do to this thing? As you can see, it's definitely a wheel spin machine. But yeah, overall, if you can manage to tame it, you can manage to get a pretty good time with it, even on a tiny little track. We are now at our top 3 with the lap times. This is the Venom Turbo. Of course, as we've seen, this thing is a bit of an aggressive monster. So of course it spins tires like crazy. But despite that, it can still get around the track pretty fast. Oops. So yeah, of course this one's pretty crazy, but still pretty fun to drive. With our second best time, we have the 595F TTS. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Another car with good power that manages to get the power down without spinning the tires like crazy. But it doesn't like turning too much. And with our best time, there is the International Goblin TAD. Now I'll admit, I definitely didn't think that this car was going to get the best time. At least with me driving mine and mine being so similar. But this thing surprised the crap out of me when I reached that finish line and it said 57 seconds. But I guess it does make sense. It's got the four-wheel drive, so it has very, very good acceleration while not having a lot of wheel spin, thanks to power to all four wheels. It does have the problem, though, of not wanting to turn very well. But despite that, of course, still got a very good time. So, congratulations to the International Goblin TAD, the 595F TTS, and the Voltus Venom Turbo for getting the top 3. I know I haven't been showing you guys my spreadsheet with the actual numbers on it, so figured I'd start showing that to you guys. As you can see, here's all the best lap times I was able to get, and I tried to give each car as much of a fair chance as I could. I think for episode 4 we're going to do our fuel testing, so hopefully some of the cars that focused more on MPG rather than, you know, super high acceleration, they'll be able to get some more points to catch back up. Along with fuel consumption, I'm also going to put out the survey for the best looks for each car. So if you go to the description, you should find a link to a Google survey where you can look at each and every car and pick your top 3. Then when it comes time to make episode 4, I will tally up all of the votes and get the scoring figured out for the looks category. And I just now finally realized that you guys might actually want to see the final score screen. So in first place we have the Voltus Venom Turbo with 141 points, and second and third are currently tied with 130 points, the Betos V8 and the SXS Tarshish. And then fourth and fifth are also tied with 126, the TS180 and the GTO. Hopefully with the fuel consumption testing and the looks survey, things will start to get a bit more interesting next episode. So be sure to check the description and go take that survey, and then also feel free to join our Discord. I'll see you guys next time.
Let's go.